curious, have you ever walked into a home and truly been captivated by the interior details within that home? Well, that's the magic of trim carpentry. And we want to talk about the importance of this very important step in the overall construction process, and maybe why it frustrates homeowners that are looking to build a custom home. Let's get to it. So we're currently sitting in one of our custom homes that is being built and entering the finish and trim out stage. So I thought it was a great opportunity to be able to go over some of the key aspects and what makes a good trim carpentry package come together. The first item that I want to talk about is our baseboard detail. Now, one of the things that we all know in the construction industry is that trim carpenters are kind of the prima donnas of our industry, but for good reason. And here's the reason why. Ultimately, a trim carpenter's job is to come in and be the final trade partner to make everything come together with a fit and finish. And oftentimes there's frustration with the previous trades, work ethic, and quality that goes into the previous stages of the overall construction of the home. Mostly that would be our framing and our drywall details. The reality is if we can't get our framing and drywall details correct, it makes it extremely difficult for the elegance to show through with the items that our trim carpentry crews are taking place of day in and day out. So in this entryway, one of the key things is that everything is plumb, square, and level. And you might think, well, duh, that is pretty much what's necessary for most building. But anyone that's seen videos on YouTube or construction reviews know that it's actually pretty extremely difficult to get everything perfect within a home. In fact, it's impossible to have true perfection with a home, especially when you're building production. Luckily, we build a number of homes a year and we're not on a production scale, and allows us to be able to go through and take the time to ensure that a lot of the details are caught before our trim carpenters come into play. One of the things that I feel like helps to ensure good baseboard details specifically is the use of Collins clips. So it's essentially glued and it's used, it's almost like it's a small clip, like almost like a clamp that allows you to be able to get a perfect corner jointed appropriately to hide any imperfections that might occur with some of the drywall and corner beadwork that's located here on the corners. Usually when you're walking a house, it's one of the first things that I notice is when baseboard isn't straight, and you can see a lot of the seams that aren't mitered, but maybe butt jointed versus a miter. And so if you zoom in here, it's pretty hard to see, but ultimately you can see this small miter coming through on this baseboard detail. And to me, that's a totally acceptable level of finish for this home. But oftentimes we see a butt joint that creates a much more defined seam. And because they don't use a Collin clips that allows you to be able to glue and really join that wood together appropriately, it creates for uneven feel overall. So the second item that I feel like is crucial when you're talking to your builder about installing baseboards appropriately is the concept of scribing. The other difficult portion of the project is to be able to take care of any variances within the subfloor, in this case on the second floor, or our concrete slab detail. We also have our essentially glue down or vinyl flooring. And to get a tight seam to the floor, it's a methodology called scribing, which allows them to be able to follow any of the contours of the wood flooring or any imperfections that might happen along the bottom of our baseboard that allows us to be able to have that tight seam. Now, if you're not willing to pay additional for scribing, the second and pretty normal process for us is to use a siliconized grout caulk that is colorized to match the floor, or at least a really close color to match the floor. So that way, if there's any separation, you won't notice it over time. But definitely when you see some of these joints from, let's say, transition from baseboard to wall, caulking is definitely going to be your friend and allow you to be able to have that clean and finished look that everyone desires. One of the things that we have our finished carpenter crew take care of, in addition to the baseboard, is the hanging of all of our doors. Now, in modern design, we typically do a kerf jamb detail, and I'll get to that in another video of how important it is to be able to work with a good sheetrock company or drywall company that allows you to be able to get really clean lines. But one of the things that you want to account for is that in your door package, if you do a kerf jamb, and we don't have a standard trim detail that runs the perimeter of the door here, we want to go with a 5/8 inch jamb, and that allows you to be able to actually bring this baseboard detail and actually die it into our jamb appropriately. And if we didn't get that 5/8 inch jamb, then a lot of times you would be fighting this seam instead of being able to caulk it in clean and have a nice consistent joint every single time on every single door within the home. So the second item I want to talk about is our ceiling details or treatments. And a lot of these are going to be designed by our interior design team. And I think there's a lot of amazing things that we could be able to accomplish to be able to dress up some of the ceiling details. In this case, we're in the primary suite and we have a vaulted ceiling. And we did a small box beam here as well as tying it into the living room. And we decided to go with a natural wood finish. So we did an ash because we're going to do a black translucent stain so that we could be able to see the wood graining and texture kind of come through that drywall. And it's going to really create a great juxtaposition between the white ceiling and the clean white palette that we have. But because it's going to be black with a little bit of grain showing through, it's going to actually tie in with a lot of our window detailing throughout the house for our windows and doors. The second ceiling treatment that we have is actually on our exterior of the home on the back patio, and it helps to tie our TNG or our nickel gap wood siding that's on the exterior facade of the front of the house into the overall architectural detailing of the home. So let's go take a peek at that real quick. So we're currently on our outdoor patio, and as you can see, it's a little windy. So we're currently sitting on our outdoor patio, and as mentioned, we brought in our TNG that's going to be a light whitewash stain. To be translucent, so we can still see that overall oak tone come out of the wood. And once again, this is a critical component where you're essentially dressing up a space, and if you don't do it right, you don't hire the right trim carpenter, it's really not going to take shape the way that you want. Now, in this case, you can't really see it. We'd have to get up a little closer, but this is glued and screwed together. So we actually utilize a screw through the joint up into a sheeted OSB so that we have a solid substrate to be able to join this to. And it really allows for us to reduce the amount of waviness that would be associated if we were to connect it to any trusses that would be associated just above the TNG paneling. And we're really excited to be able to show off some of these details because we're very proud of our finished carpentry team. Jim, the owner, takes a lot of pride with his crew and making sure that it's done right the first time, because those are the little nuances that our homeowners are going to be looking at for the lifespan in which they live within the home. Now that we've covered our ceiling treatments, which included box beams and TNG ceiling details, I do want to take a moment to say, obviously there's a lot more ceiling details. Since this is more of a modern design, we don't have crown to look at, but crown is a beast in of itself to make sure that you get those joints and cuts appropriately, especially when you have a lot of contoured crown that's going to be going up into, let's say, a cove ceiling detail or throughout the overall living space of the home. The more complex that crown, the more important it's going to be able to make sure that those miter cuts are jointed appropriately to ensure that the seams are not seen and that the corners are crisp and allow for that profile to be able to work its way through around the house, regardless of where it's going to be located. So the last thing I want to cover is cabinetry. Now, this might be a little controversial because cabinetry could be its own category, but it definitely is finished carpentry. I mean, ultimately, a lot of this stuff is going to be manufactured in a shop, but the installation definitely falls into that finished carpentry where you have to make sure that your cabinets are installed appropriately. And one of the things I'll say about cabinets is that it's the installation of the cabinets that is the key. The main reason for that is you could have the best custom cabinets made, but if you don't have a good installation team, they could really look off. They could have a lot of gaps, very noticeable with the installation. Or you can have a box cabinet. I mean, heck, you could install IKEA cabinets, and if you take your time and install them appropriately, they could look better than custom cabinets because everything's in the installation. But in this case, you know, one of the things that we're looking for, if you have the budget and the ability to go custom cabinetry, I definitely would look into that because you're able to follow more of the design intent of your design team, and you have a lot more options when it comes to how you want to live your best life within your kitchen space specifically, but also in the bathrooms and other spaces that have cabinetry throughout the home. We have a good, once again, juxtaposition as modern design with the walnut and our white detailing on this cabinet. One of my favorite features is our push to open. It's just a little plunger that allows us to be able to open up this appliance barn. And, you know, once again, same thing with our baseboard. A lot of things that are going to negatively affect our finished carpenters is how straight our walls are, how good the overall drywall work is, and how much thought energy went into placement of appropriate electrical outlets to make sure that it fits appropriately within the space or the cavity in which it was intended. Take a quick peek at that. The quick thing that I would also like to mention is when you go full custom cabinetry, obviously the overall quality of the material used is going to be key, but the second most important thing other than installation, in my opinion, is going to be the overall finisher that's taking care of all of your finished cabinetry. So in this case, we have a stark white base and we wanted a nice matte finish. And so they were able to not only do a clear translucent matte finish on all of our walnut detail, but it's very hard to see any imperfections within this panel, this MDF panel, essentially, that was painted white. I mean, I wouldn't say a perfect finish, but it definitely stands up well in this price category for this custom home. And if you work with the right trade partners, specifically with finished carpentry, they're worth every penny. And if you're going to spend money, which I know there's a lot of controversy about what goes behind the walls, which is also important. I feel like cabinetry and your finished carpentry, specifically your ceiling details, your base, your doors, some of those things that get installed, you want to make sure that you hire the right person, because those are the things that you touch, feel, and see every day. And if you don't do it right up front, it's probably going to drive you nuts for the next couple decades while you live in that home. We look forward to building on this video in future episodes when we have more extensive trim package to be able to go over. Like I said, a lot of minimal details that you probably don't see within this home, but we do have a European build that's going to be coming up soon that has a ton of amazing trim work, and I can't wait to show you it. But if you have any questions, feel free to DM us below. As always, subscribe and support our channel, and have a great day.